Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Steve Burns, who is with Step Up Leadership. Welcome to the program, Steve.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Hey, so let's just jump right into learning about what you do, what's your background, and what led you into entrepreneurship.
Okay, absolutely. It's all kind of symbiotic, and in a timeline, I was working for family when I was real young, and we had a family bakery just outside of Lake Tahoe, California, and we ran that. And as you're aware, and most of our entrepreneurs are aware, you wear many hats when you have a family-run business. And since I was the youngest, I got to wear the dirtiest hats.
Yeah, dirty job.
Oh, yeah. And it was, cleaning the grease traps and doing the dishes and mopping the floors, and everybody's got to put in their time and realize that's not the type of job that I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be out front selling the donuts or in back making the donuts. But you have to go through a process, and you have to learn a little bit here and a little bit there. And that's what I did. And when I realized where I wanted to go and how I wanted to build my life, I realized corporate America was not going to be it. But there were a lot of people struggling in corporate America. And as I developed more about who I became, I took a communications class. I wanted to be on the air and be a radio personality because people thought that I would be good at it. So I took their experience or their advice. Really loved the music, but I didn't like the corporate structure. My dialogue was pre-scripted for me. I could not go off of dialogue, a lot like an actor. And I didn't like that. I wanted my listeners to feel who I was and not just hear what I was supposed to say. And so as I got into that, I took that motivation into another family business that I married into. It was a manufacturing company, and started talking with people and started developing my people skills. And as I did that, I realized that I was able to connect with people based on my experiences, because what I would do is I would give them the feel, felt, found methodology. I know how you feel. I felt the same way before, and this is what I found as far as making it a success or turning it around into a gold mine. And I saw people really taking off with that. And when I got into the manufacturing business, it just seemed that I had an eye and a feel for processes and procedures. I could streamline assembly lines a little bit quicker and help, mundane tasks seem easier to do and not so repetitive and tedious, and make it an enjoyable atmosphere. And so from that, one opportunity led to the next, and then soon I became a business consultant for the manufacturing and production arena. And I would go to different companies and help them out. And I would see a lot of success in that. The companies would be happy because we're, improving their bottom line, reducing risk, and getting a product out quicker to the public with minimal errors. One thing I found out is after I would leave as a business consultant, some of these businesses, they would go right back into the same trap. And I could not figure out how to adjust that. Then I met a man named John Maxwell, who I became aligned with, and I'm also part of the John Maxwell certification program, and I am one of his certified coaches. And I use a lot of his philosophies in my business because of an experience I had with him. And what he did is he helped me adjust the mindset of the workers and the executives or management so that they would get complete buy-in. And once they got buy-in, I could leave and they would still maintain that level of success or accuracy and improve on it. And that's where I started to really feel that was my niche. And so when I would go into different companies, how I would set it up in my interviews or my consultation sessions is I would talk to the executives and find out what they wanted to have done. And if it involved a manufacturing or an assembly line, then I would go talk to the frontline employees. And I would say, okay, this is what management and executives want done. How realistic is it, or what can we do to make it easier for you to accomplish this mindset? And so I would get their input. And then I would come back and I would devise a plan between those two philosophies, and I would take it back to the executives, and I would say, okay, here you go. This is what I've come up with. This is how I see this industry or this particular business could work more efficiently, and it would help out the frontline employees. And I would get buy-in from the executives. They're like, oh, yeah, this is great stuff, Steve. We like that. If they're willing to step up and do this type of work, great, let's move forward. And I would hand them the business plan and say, okay, here you go. Go show it to them. Because that's where the big gap I have found is between the suits, if you will, and the frontline employees. Because
so you kind of became a mediator, translator, coach, all in one.
Absolutely. And so that way I expressed to the executives the value that I brought, saying, hey, look, this is what's going on. This is what your frontline employees want. Now, you may have been there before, but since you've left, things have changed and adjusted, and that thought process may no longer work as well. This is what they're saying works better and would be more efficient for them. If we could allow them to do that and get to your ends, we all win. And so the executives would say, wow, that's pretty good, Steve. Here you go. And I push it right back on there and says, no, here you go. We're going to break that wall of intimidation. You're going to get in there and you're going to talk with those frontline employees and allow them to talk back to you, or talk back with you, not to you.
Yeah.
Not in a negative sense.
Not disrespectful, yeah.
Right. So that we can all be on the same page, because once I leave, who are they going to want to have to talk to? They're going to have to talk to you. And if you know what's going on and they know what's going on, now you've got a symbiotic relationship that you can bridge any types of gaps, any types of troubled waters, and you can come to a conclusion. And then as you continue to grow, then I can step back in and say, okay, now if we have these executives that were at this level, but we're ready to move them up, or mid-level management up into the executive, or any of the frontline employees up to a management or leadership position, now I can come in and work with those people individually, because we've identified who is ready to make that step. Now, as we make that step, now we can get more core leadership attributes into them, so that they can, in turn, share with their team. Their team can grow those leadership aspects, and then anybody in their influence will be able to receive those same benefits. And so with that thought philosophy, I continued to grow my business, continued to network, and now I'm expanding it a little bit more into the youth programs.
So let's pause there, and before we get into youth, because I think that sounds very interesting. It sounds like you had started off saying that you liked entrepreneurship from the fact that you have freedom and creativity. So you wanted to go down that path, but then you don't like the confines of being an employee, but then you do like engineering processes, systems, and structures. So what a perfect marriage of all three of those aspects to be a coach helping people that appreciate systems and processes like the manufacturing, where you can take the best that you can offer, which is your creativity and coaching approach, and help someone zero in on implementing and uncovering processes in their business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. From a young age, I got introduced to both mindsets. My mom was an entrepreneur. I mean, she's like, if you want to do what you want to do, you've got to, work for yourself. And if you want to get paid what you feel you're worth, again, you've got to work for yourself. My dad was more of the corporate entity. Clock in at 7:30, clock out at 3:30, do what you're asked, nothing more, nothing less, work for 40 years, and hopefully they'll give you a good retirement, and then you can, go on. Well, my mom was not in that. And while there are some great freedoms found inside of entrepreneurship, there are some confines because it is all on you. And that's the tough part. Whereas if you're working in the corporate world, you're working for, an agreed upon salary every year, and you know what's exactly expected of you. And you can go in and do the same thing day in and day out. And you know exactly when your vacations are and when your time off is going to be. But then with the size of a corporation, you can get strength and stability and have pretty good communication and leadership skills developed. And so I take the good from both aspects and I share it with my clients. And
that's really huge to realize, and it makes me think of another question. What is something that executives from larger firms do that small companies miss, but they shouldn't miss? So in other words, you might not be a Fortune 500 company, but there's something that the larger firms do that maybe the small to medium-sized business, they should be doing it as well, but they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, well, there's two things that I see that the large corporations do that mid to small size or mom and pops should do that they don't. One is they get coaching themselves. 65% of all Fortune 500 CEOs have a personal and professional coach with them. And so if they're doing that at their level, why couldn't a smaller company do that at their level? Now, it's not going to be a $35,000 or $40,000 a year coach that a smaller company can afford, but they can go down and find a business coach that is at their level. Maybe it's $5,000 or $10,000 a year, but they're going to get the same rewards as a large corporation would. And the other one is they invest in their leaders. They identify who is up and coming or their management, and they invest in them. They give them ongoing training. Now, it may not necessarily just be industry specific. They'll go out and teach them, or allow them to train and gain better people skills, or better craftsmen, or better thought philosophy, or how to, become a better manager, things like that. Something outside of the normal routine. That way, their employees feel invigorated and a little bit more challenged on a different level.
Yeah, that's really that kind of gets back to the concept of the best kind of way to improve your business is to first start with improving yourself. So the personal development and coaching, and maybe it's the concept of you can't really impact and lead most effectively in your business, whether you're an entrepreneur or an executive, without you first going through some personal development yourself, just because of just that aspect that it's a foundation to build on.
Exactly. Because the person you are today got you to where you're at, but where you need to go, you need to be a different person.
Yeah.
You have to grow and develop even more. Now, in the general routine of a large corporation, just being, an employee or a number there, they don't expect much, but when they do find somebody that is able to grow, they grow quickly and they get responsibility placed on them rather quickly. In the small corporate or the small entrepreneurial world, everybody's constantly trying to find their own niche in the market and how they separate themselves from everybody else. Well, if you have those people skills, or you're growing yourself, those interpersonal skills, you're understanding exactly what your niche is.
Yeah, that's a really key thing to keep in mind. So, hey, let's wrap up with one final point, which is what you were mentioning earlier is your youth focus. How does that work?
Yeah, so this has been a fantastic opportunity that was presented to me a few years ago, and I've turned it into my passion because I realized I can connect both ends of the business scale together. When I do my executive coaching, my executives tell me there's a disconnect right now on a whole. Now, granted, there are certain exceptions, but through this millennial era, a lot of the up-and-coming people don't know how to identify themselves or set themselves apart to become leaders. Well, the executives see a disconnect. They're having a hard time identifying these leaders because they either want to play games or they want to spend too much free time away from work, or they don't have the same work ethic as, say, the baby boomers grew up with, or even the next gen, my generation. We grew up with dual incomes and not a whole lot of free time. So what I do is I take all of those feelings and thoughts that they're telling me that is a disconnect, and I teach it to the youth, so that the youth that want to grow up and they want to have these skills and they want to get positions of leadership, they will be easier identified once they get into the real world, or the working world, if you will. And as the youth of our generation or the country do that, and they get into a level of position, it's easier for management and the executives to identify who's got those certain skills. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that there are certain things I wish I would have known when I started out that I know now. It would have taken me a whole different avenue of work. There are some things right now I see that the young people in America need that they don't know they need. But if they incorporate that and they're open to it and they apply it to their lives, they will get identified quicker. I've got executives from Fortune 500 companies telling me so, that if they find somebody with these skills, they're pretty much hiring them on the spot.
So are you working with a nonprofit, or is this just some group coaching with youth, teaching them entrepreneurship?
So this is a program I designed. It's called the Emerging Youth Leadership Program, and it is not a nonprofit, but I do donate funds to local charities, and most of the money raised for this program goes back to students in the form of scholarships and grants so that they can go on to higher education.
Mm-hmm. Neat. Well, that's love hearing when people give back and help. It's kind of like, when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, it would have been 10 years ago, because then we would have seen the tree right now, but the next best time is right now. So how do you help tomorrow's leaders, help them, help the leaders today, but if we can help the youth coming up, that's going to prepare the next wave and the next generation of leaders. So I really like that. So how can people learn more about what you do? What's the best way to contact you?
Well, the best way to contact me is right now via email at stepupleadership@gmail.com. I am on LinkedIn. Steve Burns is my handle. Facebook, it would be Step Up Steve. And I am trying to gain a social media presence. That is something that I've lacked in. So I'm trying to track it all down into one easy-to-find location, which I don't have yet. But Step Up Steve on Facebook, or Steve Burns through LinkedIn, and then stepupleadership@gmail.com will connect with me directly.
Super. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for your time on the interview today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Mike. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.